Welcome to the Congo Hour. We're back again here on 190 and full of excitement today. We got a great guest. We just have finally been able to start interviewing folks. And so we just want you to stay here with us for 1 hour. And we're going to help you to be educated about a choice that you got to make. And that choice is going to be making sure that we cut down on the gun violence, and the key to the gun violence is education. And we need folks from the education field to get in the position where they can make decisions where it will flow down and it'll trickle down to the school systems where voting will take place. We'll have better educated kids, but right now we're going to have to take a quick break, and we'll be back with the person that's going to give us some leadership in our school systems.
Okay, and also I just want to mention that if you ever need information about any of our upcoming funeral services, please go to www.congofuneralhome.com. Again, that website address is www.congofuneralhome.com. You will be able to leave a condolence for the family. You will be able to see the upcoming services. So you can send flowers. You can send flowers right from our website. You can light a candle in memory of a loved one. But again, if you need more information, you can always call us at 652-8887. But if you just want to go to our website, it is www.congofuneralhome.com.
Thank you for staying tuned in to the Congo Hour, and what we promised you, we plan to let you feast on it. Most of the night will be based on a good friend of mine down through the years. I've known him ever since he was a young man, and just learning all the great experiences that he has. I hope he'll share some of that with you so you will know the kind of quality, dynamite, well-versed person that he is. I am so impressed, and I've known him forever, but I didn't know he had all this stuff going for him. So these are the kind of people that we need in these critical positions to help our young folks. And that's where he is focused on right now. He's been in the educational system, he's been in the corporate system, and he knows America. And he knows Delaware. He was brought up here in Delaware, and he stayed right here with us. And so right now I want to introduce you to some, and I guess others that know him share with him all the kinds of things that he plans to do for our school system. He's running for the Christina board, and I'm excited to know that, because that's where my peeve is, and that's my pet peeve, the school systems. And we're going to start heading in that direction as soon as he gets an opportunity to get on this board. But you got to vote. You got to tell your friends. You got to tell folks to come out and just vote for this guy. I'm gonna let him introduce himself, and I want you to listen carefully about why he wants to be a member of the Christina School Board.
Thank you, Sam. I really appreciate you. I've known the Congos, Cherry and Sammy, for years, and always respected the work they've done in the community. So it's an honor for me to have an opportunity to come on their show and share a little bit about myself and my passion and the things that I think we can do as a community to come together and ensure that all of our kids receive a quality education. So let me start by telling you a little bit about myself. I'm a lifelong Wilmingtonian. I grew up, went to the schools here, graduated from Wilmington High School, immediately was drafted in the military, served in Vietnam, returned from Vietnam. And, when I was in Vietnam, I saw a lot of things. I saw no educational system. I saw third world folks, the environment, the cultures that they lived in. And I always realized that I wanted better. When I left, Obviously, I didn't go to school. I went transitioned in the military straight out of high school. But when I came back, I had this passion to go to college and to make something of myself. And so I did that. I went to Delaware State University, graduated with a teaching degree, came back to the Wilmington Public Schools, and that was my first teaching position. I taught at Warner Junior High School. I had a chance to go to work in corporate America, and so I went to work for the DuPont company. Now, I missed a step, and I think it's important because later on I'll help you make the connection with me. While I was, when I graduated from high school and while I was waiting to determine what my next steps were going to be just before being drafted, I worked in a hospital. I worked in the old Memorial Hospital. And the job I had was just a real entry-level job as a X-ray orderly, taking patients to and from. When I came back from the military, they were required to give me a job. So I went back and I worked in respiratory. So I have a hospital background, and I got that from my mother. That's where my mother worked. That was the service that she provided to our community. So I kind of took after her in that regard. But when I graduated and went to work for the old Wilmington Public Schools, I decided I had a chance to better myself and to help my children. So I took a job working for DuPont. Worked for them for 7 years. I left DuPont after they sold the unit that I was in, and I went to work for Sherwin-Williams for 3 years. They closed the division that I was in on the East Coast and kept me, and I had to relocate to New York. And so I decided not to do that. So I actually, every day, drove from Wilmington to North Jersey, where the office was in a place called Moonachie, New Jersey. And I stayed there until I was able to get a position with Patton Lambert. All these were competitors, by the way. And I was the only person of color that worked in the different divisions or companies that I'm speaking about. I worked in Pratt & Lambert as the only person of color in their national sales organization, and I did that for 10 years. They sold out, and when they sold out, I was tired of just moving from company to company. So I went back to education. And so I spent 34 total years either as a teacher, a coach, a principal, a supervisor in a district office, and for the last 6 years, I've also been on the school board of a Spirit Academy. It's a public charter school in the Newark area. So I have a vast level of interest and service and experience to draw from when we talk about connecting corporate America with our school system and educational experience, knowing how to reach young people and knowing what a curriculum should look like, understand the fiduciary responsibilities that are a part of a school board member. And so tonight we can talk a little bit about some of the aspects of how that helps our community.
That's very interesting. You know, that broad experience that you've had, you can almost relate to anybody, anywhere, and help us to focus on how we can take that talent that you have and that exposure that you have and give guidance to the kids. And so we need a real experienced professional person to do just what you're aiming to do. And so tell me why you feel that when people are selecting, because a lot of folks are going to go to the polls and they're going to choose. Why would they choose you other than somebody else? Because other people have qualifications too.
So a very good question, Sammy. And so let me share some of my experiences. I've always had a good relationship with the superintendents we had in our district in earlier years. Joey Wise, some people may remember that name. And he came into the district, and when he left, I actually think he did a fair job. I don't think he did a great job, but I think he did a fair job. But when he left, we were $13 million in the hole because he had a lot of different types of ideas on how to work with urban kids. And so the first thing he did was move the district office to Wilmington. And he felt like if we were going to really be serious about servicing the kids of Wilmington, we needed to be there where they were. So he moved. When Joey was in the Dr. Wise, as some people will know him by, he came to me and he said, look, I need your help. I need you to look at some of the things that we want to do to help our kids. And I want you to do some visiting of different institutions, different school sites across the country, different companies to look at their products. And then I want you to make some recommendations. And so I did that. When he left and Dr. Lowry came in, we were $13 million in the hole. Dr. Lowry came and she said, look, I trust you, and I want for you, myself, Dan Cruz, and our company lawyer to go to Dover and talk to legislators. She recognized that I knew a lot of people and that I had some experience. And so we went to Dover and we were able to convince the legislators that we met with and the Department of Education that we were worthy of the $13 million that we needed to keep the district solvent. Dr. Lyles came in after her, and I became a thought partner with her. I remember a conversation she and I had one day, and she told me how much she valued not only my commitment and my passion, but my skills to be able to work at a higher level in the district. And I said to her then, not really interested in that. My home is with kids, and I want to stay with our kids. And so I did that. After she left, our district took a nosedive, and it hasn't rebounded yet. So why would you vote for me? When I was a principal at Kirk Middle School, I went in and we were the lowest performing secondary school, specifically middle school, in the district. We had some cultural issues. We had, our school was a combination of students from the city and students from the suburbs. Most of the students that I serviced came from the Southbridge area. We took an aggressive approach to instruction with the staff that we had that was really committed to our kids. And with that, we were able to move from the lowest performing to the highest performing secondary school in the district. And we achieved the highest academic award that you can receive from the Lieutenant Governor of Delaware's academic award for academic excellence that came along with a $5,000 cash reward that we used. Our staff decided how to use that. We also were the first school, secondary school again. I'm always talking about secondary schools because our elementary schools did a much better job than our secondary schools did. But as a secondary school, to make AYP. AYP is average yearly progress. It was a federal designation to schools that were doing well. We received that honor, the only secondary school in our district to receive it at that time. And as a result, some people like a gentleman many of you may know by the name of Jay Street were knocking on the door of the district office saying, we want our kids to return back to the city. We don't want our kids bussed out 45 minutes to an hour bus ride one way every day when we can develop schools right close to home. It was a Neighborhood School Act that he was actually referring to that was passed by our legislation or our legislators. And as a result, we sit down, talked, and planned. I was asked to be the principal of Byard Middle School, which previously was elementary school. And I was asked at that time to build a curriculum and a staff that related to students who were low performing and of high poverty backgrounds. We worked hard. We understood the challenge. One of the things that we wanted to do, and Sammy, you were talking about this a little bit earlier, and I was kind of laughing inside. We know that our kids don't succeed unless our parents are connected to the process. And so one of the things that we made a really high priority on transitioning to Byard, which, by the way, that was the first time a public middle school was in the city of Wilmington in over 25 years. So we put those students in Byard. It was over 800 students. There was around 860 some students. And we said to the staff, we've really got to be culturally competent in how we educate our folk, our young folk. And so that means we got to do things different. We couldn't take what we did at Kirk and just transplant it to Byard and say, okay, this will work. You had to think different. You had to act different. You had to be more things to kids there than you were at Kirk, where many of the students had mother and fathers, or they had parents who were really able to do some of the things that parents in the city had to go to work rather than be able to do some of the things that you would want done at the school. So we developed a program for our parents. And as a result, in 2010, we received the Lieutenant Governor's Award of Excellence for Parent Engagement. And we were very proud of that award because we set that as a top priority and we actually made it happen. Here's the real deal about urban schools. Our kids need so much more. And, you know, you hear the word equity a lot. And the question is, what does equity mean? And so it means this. It means you give every single student, if it's 864, it's 864. You give every single student what they need to be successful. And that's where the problem is right now. Our schools are still operating off of a old, antiquated thought process about what education is. Education is now breaking it down to assessing each student's needs. And it's almost like you're developing an individual plan, not an individual improvement, IEP, which is an individual education plan, but it's an individual improvement plan for every single student so that we're tapping into what they want. Let me give you an example. We had some young ladies in 7th grade one year that were failing. They didn't care about school. They had other interests. And so what we were able to do through one of my teachers coming to me and saying, Mr. Patton, I want to try STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math with these young ladies over the summer. So let's develop a program that we can use to give them credits so that they can pass on to the 8th grade. We brought those students in. Miss Campbell, Anita Campbell, who came to us from Hercules. She worked in science as a scientist at the or something related to science at the Hercules company, and she came over. She took these young ladies over the summer and worked on a project. There's a platform called project-based learning. They developed a project that they wanted to work on. They worked on it all summer. They were highly successful, and they were extremely happy about the end results. The next year, in 8th grade, those very same young ladies became leaders of our 8th grade student body because they had success, because we really connected with how they best learn. And we took the time to be patient enough to assess and to listen to them tell us what they felt they could do or wanted to do in that summer program. So we have to do that more globally in our district. The other area that I see that we have to work on that I have experience with that I believe would qualify me over anyone else who's running for this seat on the school board is diversity. We need to have schools and programs in our schools that reflect the demographics of the student body. We need to have leaders in all of our schools that reflect the demographics of the student body. There's one fundamental, foundational thing that works with all students that I know and that I can help our board members understand. You have to build a relationship with young people. You have to. The very first thing you have to do if you want to be successful in education, actually, I will say in any job, in any area, is build relationships so that kids know you care. There's a saying that goes, kids don't care what you know until they know that you care. And so once we establish that, once our teachers establish that, then they're able to break this barrier that our kids are constantly found circulating around, which is a lack of trust. You build a relationship, you get the trust, and then it's much easier to educate our young people. So I've learned a lot in the 20 years I was in corporate America and the 34 years that I either coached or taught or was a leader. And as a result, I don't think that unique experience you can find in any of the other candidates who are running for this office. And the last thing, Sammy, is all of my life, 16 years I coached girls varsity basketball, 13 at Wilmington High School, 3 at Newark High School. My passion for kids started when I was in my 20s and worked at the Boys and Girls Club. I think that qualifies me. I think the love and the passion that I have for young people qualifies me to know a little bit about something and to go into this job with the understanding of the things that will help students be better people for our society.
You said a lot, and I think that it began to make me go back about 50 years when I worked at the Walnut Street YMCA. And we developed a group of kids that all went to college.
Yep.
But it took parents, it took volunteer leadership.
Yep.
Talk to me about how do you feel about the fact that in the areas where kids are very successful, parents, leadership, support systems that glue together the talent, and they learn from those kind of exposures that allow them to move on. I remember when you said you worked at the old Memorial Hospital.
Yeah.
You know, when I used to go in and out of there from Uncle Ed, one of the exposures that was there, and the kids didn't get paid, they were called candy stripers, remember?
That's right, I remember, yes.
And those candy stripers were exposed to probably 10,000 jobs that were in that school. And with the electronics and the new medicines and the new ways of taking x-rays or whatever it might be, just that alone, if there was a program, because I remember they had a program called the co-op program.
You took the words out of my mouth.
Okay, well talk to us about that.
You as you were sitting here talking about the candy stripers, those were volunteers that worked in the hospital, and as you said, they had exposure to everything. It reminded me back of when I was in high school, and there were students who went to work 2 weeks and went to school 2 weeks. And they had a teacher who was responsible for going out on the job sites and making sure the students were connected to what they were supposed to do. They were showing up when they were supposed to show up. They dressed properly. They just were an extension of the job from school. And I can't tell you how successful that program was, and I can't explain why we don't do it anymore. Sammy, you probably remember or have heard of Sarah Powell. Sarah Powell is a school that Dr. Richards started some years ago. And she had a dream of what she wanted that program to look like. And it was taking students who weren't our traditional students. They aren't the students that come in the classroom and they already know, they have the drive and the ambition and they have the intellectual capabilities to get to where they want to go because they've had supports. But then we have some kids who come, as you mentioned, who don't have supports. But we still need to educate all kids. And too many times, all doesn't mean all. All means who I think is all, not every student that walks through my doors. So we have to get back to where it's all students. We're identifying what is it that interests them, what is their skill level, and let's place those students where they can be successful. Every student is not going to go to college. Let's face that reality. I don't have anything against working to prepare all students in case they change their mind and want to go to college. But all students aren't going to reach that same level. So for those students who aren't, let's identify them. One of the ways that some, back in the time that you spoke about, parents wanted to help their students identify whether they wanted to be a nurse, a doctor, or in the medical field, any of those positions, they sent them to be candy stripers. When Dr. Melvina Richards started Sarah Powell, her commitment and passion was every student that walks through this door, we're going to find out what they do well, and we're going to find the connection. So she had a form of co-op. Kids came in, they got the mandatory classroom work done that needed to be done for them to move from grade to graduation. And then there was a time in the day, and I can't tell you whether it was 3 hours or 4 hours, I think it was 4 hours, those students went to work. She had a job coach who actually went out and found jobs for those students. And these are students who were reached 16 years of age and didn't have enough credits that they could foreseeably graduate. She put them through Sarah Powell and the program that she established to make sure they did. A few years after she started the program, she worked with a gentleman by the name of James Bond. James Bond worked with the local companies and asked them to contribute old computers. And then he bought parts and then trained students on how to repair the computers. And he rebuilt the computers. After the computers were rebuilt, then they gave them away to people in low-income communities so that they had the opportunity for their kids to access the internet with a computer, to do schoolwork, extended schoolwork with a computer. And so we know that there are programs that reach our kids, prepare our kids, all of our kids, and that they worked. And so one of the things, again, I would advocate on the board to say, look, we've got to re-examine and re-image our educational system so that it addresses the students that we have now. And when we do that, we're going to clean up some of the problems that we have in our streets today. Problems such as a lot of our kids are shooting and killing each other. Why do they get into these situations? I would argue a good part of it is because we're not educating them to the point where they can leave our educational system successful and go out and get jobs and earn a good or a decent income to support themselves, and when they have families, their families. So when we don't always, I don't think, steer the conversation in the right direction, as a board member, I will, because if we want our society to reflect the positive things that we know it can do, we have to be the force behind making sure our young people are educated, they have decent paid summer jobs, and that there's someone who is advocating 24/7 for kids whose parents may not know how to do that well for them. We have to plan for that. We have to bridge the gap between home and school, making sure that we allow every single student that walks into our schools that they have a high predictability of success beyond the high school 12th grade year. And if we do that, then the shootings and all the other negative, impactful things that are hurting our communities will be diminished or eliminated. But I can tell you right now, if you look into and talk to a lot of the young men and women who are connected to the violence that is taking place, it'll come back to they didn't have the income or a job opportunity to get incomes that will sustain them and their families. So we have to be creative. We have to re-image a lot of our instructional platforms and systems so that we're able to address our community needs, so that all of us feel more safe and comfortable where we live every day and where we work every day, because we're addressing the most critical, massive need of our young people: education.
I think you're absolutely right in all those aspects. A real, I can give you a real live experience about the co-op working. Cherry worked for Dr. Harris at Brown School, and she was there as a result of the co-op program. And then we talk about resources. Cherry, after working with Dr. Brown, ran across the fact that, and she was one of the first blacks to work at the Attorney General's office. So she got a job, Maynard Jones.
I knew Maynard.
You knew Maynard. And Maynard got a job at the Attorney General's office, all because she knew shorthand. And so she left the Attorney General's office after many years and found that because the Attorney General's office was kind of political, she wanted a more stable job. And when she got from that experience, she was one of the first blacks to join the Hercules, because Hercules didn't hire blacks in a professional level. And when she went there, she excelled until we went into the business. But it's a combination of resources. And what I think where a whole lot of people, parents and non-parents, need to get involved. And I talked about the YMCA. We had probably 10 staff and 150 volunteers. And they all had value that helped those kids to find themselves. And, you know, the church has many, many ministries. I believe that the school board needs ministries that can wrap around the needs of the kids, just like they have ministries that wrap around the needs of the community from the church perspective. I think these kinds of ministries, that when a kid begins to fail, and these resources of professional volunteer people can recognize that and shift them from one ministry to another until the kid finds himself. And the kids will never find himself properly until the parent is in there with him. So I think that kind of redoing things where people could come to the PTA meetings. Do they still have PTA meetings?
They have PTA and PTO, Parent-Teacher Organization or Parent-Teacher Association. There's some subtle differences between the two, but schools have either one or the other. They won't have them both in the same school. They'll have one or the other.
Okay. Whatever one it is, we need to help that organization to recognize the value of volunteer leadership. And that volunteer leadership just puts thousands of people as resources in the in the school system, which will touch base with thousands of kids. And those kids, once they get it, they're going to pass that on to another kid. And so, you know, that's just my theory. How are we making out over there, Alvin? Okay? And so it's so important to have people like yourself that has this broad, general awareness of the kid's weakness, the fact that homes are necessary for us to visit, recognize some of the weaknesses, and then help to strengthen the parents. And the combination of all those things will give us a better place for Wilmington to thrive with the people that our society does not want everybody to live in Wilmington. But I believe that as we begin to understand what society is expecting of each of us so that they can really help us to come in. Because they have something what I call the inaccurate perception to the map of reality. And that inaccurate perception is what we are stigmatized with when we have plenty of kids with high IQs and vision and want to be successful. But they're stigmatized by these inaccurate perceptions because of dress codes and language barriers and just barriers of inaccurate perceptions.
So we call that, Sammy, implicit bias.
It's called what?
We call it implicit bias.
Okay.
So here's one of the things I've been trying to process. I guess is a good word. And what I mean is this: when the demographics of our schools are not reflected in the leadership of our school, you don't understand what my needs are. You don't understand my culture and where I come from. So we've got to get back to, there used to be a time where, I'm going to say a name and I hope you remember it, Dr. Metz, Iris Metz.
I remember Iris Metz.
And Frank Rischel.
I remember Frank.
Frank Rischel was a really good second in command. Frank understood the whole system from top to bottom. He understood people, and he understood education. And he had a partner who understood the student count, understood finances, and between the three of them, they made it work like it was a seamless clock. Here's what Frank understood that I think we've lost somewhere along the line. Whatever the demographics of my school, I need to have a diverse leadership team. We have leadership teams now that are either all black or all white, but the demographics of the school are more diverse than that. I believe that the board has to ask the questions, and here's why. Why are our schools not diverse? Think of this, and you're a businessman and you've got a lot of experiences. If you and I are going to make decisions and we have a diverse staff that works for us, and I'm your right-hand guy, and you and I are sitting at the table making decisions about things that are going to impact that staff, whose voice is at the table? Your voice and my voice. If we have Hispanic folks, their voice is not at the table. If we have white folks, their voice is not at the table. So we need to have the makeup of our school needs to be reflected in our leadership. Because if I'm not at the table when you're making the decisions, that acts as a form of privilege. Because I'm going to make decisions that you and I can relate to and understand and may need, but I haven't incorporated that diverse group of people who aren't sitting here helping us make that decision. So we all walk around with implicit bias about many different things. What we hope is that most people don't act on those biases when they're in a capacity of leadership or as a teacher. And how do we do that? We train them. We train them in culturally relevant teaching strategies so that they understand that when a kid gets on the bus from, say, South Ridge and comes to school, that maybe the night before there was a shooting on the corner where he was standing. And that has an impact on his learning that day. It may have a long-term impact because it's trauma-based. So We've got to make sure when we're having conversations about our school that we have the right people sitting at the table that reflect the student body of our schools. Second thing, recently there was a achievement, a great achievement by a small group of students in a school. And one of the people said, the school did a great job, but the school didn't do a great job. And the board doesn't understand that if they don't look into the details of who achieved that honor. Every student, I don't care if it's just one student that has success, we should celebrate it. So we celebrate all of our students when they have successes, but we can't celebrate a school when we look at the whole of the school and the whole's not doing well. And so what I used to always say to my teachers, if we have a class, one teacher whose class in math, all are proficient. So the Smarter Balance is a state assessment, summative assessment, and the scoring is 1 to 4. So if this teacher, all of her students receive a 3 or 4, she's very successful. But if that's the only class in the school that does that, what good is my school? That class did well. We need to celebrate that class. But what about the other students who didn't do well? What are we doing to make that happen? Every student should be celebrated for with the same opportunities for success. So when we're sitting at the table talking about AP, we should be sitting at the table talking about students that we need to give some additional supports that are from a different group to push them into AP classes, as opposed to just saying, these kids did very well, we did our job. These kids are not really there, and we just have to keep educating them where they are instead of pushing them. Every single classroom and every single school in America should be a rigorous classroom. The definition of rigor should be written across the school, and every teacher understand that that's the goal that we all strive for every student that walks in our class. Now, when we do that, now we can celebrate the students in the AP classes, in the Cambridge classes, in the AVID classes, in the honors classes, and in the other classes in our school, because they may not be at that level, but guess what? We're pushing them towards that level. And the expectation is that they get and do better as we continue to work with them in the areas that they have a deficit in. So that's what I talk about when I talk about implicit bias. It's that, and it's not intentional in many cases. Some cases it is. Many cases it's not intentional. We just don't think deep enough to understand the impact when we don't have leaders that look like and reflect the diversity of their school.
I believe that if you have a class, like you mentioned, everybody did great, and you have a class over here and they didn't do great, that requires a real strong audit that lets you understand that some kids are handicapped as a result of a system that was not prepared to take them the same place this one was. Right. But we don't do that. Right. And so we just say that these kids are stigmatized, and they also are stamped with a certain stamp that even makes them feel inferior. Right. And so I think an ongoing process where we have the responsibility to really educate our kids, especially the kids that are not with the kind of resources that privileged kids are. And so if our state of Delaware is really serious about educating everybody, there cannot be a budget based on the revenue from that location. It has to be based on the needs of that location, and maybe the location where they're putting all the money, because it has a greater tax base, could be helping this income base here to move up. I think that these kinds of ways of making this state to be a better place involves a lot of really creative people who have tremendous passions and are committed to education and understand what is necessary to get this place an even playing field. And I believe it can be done, and I think it takes people like yourself who have the ingenuity, the values, and the awareness and the skill that you can transfer all that you have to that board to help them to make some great education decisions.
Well, so something I didn't share at the beginning. For the last 15 years, I traveled across the country working with school districts, training school board members, training district office staff, superintendents, assistant superintendents, directors, principals, assistant principals, in the system that I spoke about, culturally relevant teaching. Part of about 2009 to 2013, I was called and asked to go to Maryland, Baltimore County Public Schools. The name of the school is the name of a movie, actually. It's Woodlawn High. I actually spent 4 years as a consultant for Woodlawn High. And we did a pilot program, Sammy. Here's what it looked like. If anyone wants to go to my Facebook page, it's Patton, the number 4, Christina School, well, actually it's the initials for Christina School District. So it's Patton, the number 4, CSDB. And there's a video on there. It's about a 6-minute and 50-second video. This was the program. So City Foundation agreed to fund 6 schools in the United States of America, just 6. And of those 6 schools, 2 were in California, 1 was in Las Vegas, 1 was in New York, 1 was in Texas, and 1 was in Baltimore. The program, or the pilot, was that we were going to take, and we ended up with about 31, 32 students. There were 9th graders, and here was the criteria for getting into the program. You had to be failing. You had to have a high incidence of behavior referrals. You had to have low attendance. And you had to be potentially in the pipeline from school to prison. You had to have that kind of background to get into this program. We wanted to take the worst students in the building. And we did. We trained the teacher. The one I worked with was Mr. Martin. We trained the teacher. We met with them every summer for 4 years. And then they go back and incorporate the things that next school year. At the end of this program, it's documented, it's in the video. I didn't do the video. I'm in the video, but I didn't do it. Every single student received 4-year offers for college. I'm not talking about 80%, 70%, 60%. I'm saying 100%. We lost 1 student. He relocated. Every single student received college offers or acceptance. Every last one. I came back to Delaware. I was so excited. And I offered our superintendent. City Foundation said, we'll pay. You put his name down, we'll pay. Flying, I went. Flew everyone. They would fly everyone to Dallas, Texas. They had a expert authority on culturally relevant teaching and working with students from California and New York who are disadvantaged. Pedro Nagaro is his name. He spoke, and then they presented what they call the blueprint which was the document that outlined every step that we had gone through in those 4 years. I offered it to our superintendent. The trip, paid. It wasn't costing the district anything. Didn't go. Didn't even want to use the work in our district. We used it at Byard successfully. Didn't want to use it. I then turned around, free of charge, and offered it to outlying school districts. Because it said African American Male Initiative, I think people were afraid. When in fact, you could apply the same strategy to every student, to any group of students. We went with who City Foundation documented as having the lowest rate of performance on all standardized testing, summative testing. We went with that group of students because that's who they were targeting. When I came back to my district after the results, we had a girls group, we had a Hispanic group, and we had an African American group. All three of those groups were highly successful at Byard. So we know how to educate all of our kids. We know the things to do to be successful that will have a meaningful impact on our society, on our communities. People just have to have the will to do what's right and do what you just suggested. We have to understand that every kid doesn't wear the same size shoe. They wear different size shoes. So we have to do something different for every student. And that we fall short on. And we've got to do better. A good friend of mine says, when you know better, you do better.
Yeah, this has been very, very interesting because I guess every professional educator understands resources make all the difference in the world. And yet because of our, like the superintendent of schools when it said African American, can't really feel that the people, I don't know how to really say this nicely, but that they don't want to hurt the feelings of the majority of people.
Right.
And so they deny the people who need it the most because of a self-imposed value that says, well, it's okay in the African American community, but we're a public school and we can't do that. When, as you said, the strategy is the same, and there are underprivileged white kids, underprivileged Mexican kids, there are underprivileged that need motivation. But when you put something like that on the top, it lets you know that racism still is live and well. And we're not really doing things to destroy this terrible monster that is destroying America.
Yeah.
So it's been wonderful to have you here. You have surely, the folks that have tuned in, had a greater knowledge and awareness of the kinds of things that need to be done. And I'm sure that you will receive many, many votes. I'm sure that you will have people that will go out and knock on the door of other people who understand the needs. And you're sacrificing yourself to be a person that's going to try to meet the needs of these wonderful people. Thanks again for tuning in. My friend here, I didn't think he said what his name was, but it's Donald Patton. And Donald's been a long, one of the things that happens to our major players where they come from out of town and they leave.
Yeah.
And they leave so much undone. Donald's been here, his lifetime ain't going nowhere. So it's imperative that's the kind of people that you get into important places look forward to seeing you next week, and maybe Don will come back and let us know what he's doing on the board when he wins.
Can I tell him the vote? On May the 11th, from 7 to 8 p.m., you can vote. You can go to my website, www.patton, the number 4, csdb.com, and it will tell you where the voting sites are. There's only 17 this year, only 3 in Wilmington. In Wilmington, I can tell you, it's Bayard, Bancroft, and Quaker Hill. There's 10 elementary schools, all 3 high schools, and 1 middle school in the suburbs. So go to the website, and please, on May 11th, I ask for your support and your vote for the school board election, Christina School Board, on May 11th. Thank you, Sammy. I appreciate the opportunity.
And thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.
Since 1975, the Congo family and the Congo Funeral Home have been a caring part of this community. We have cared for you in life, and we have cared for you in death, whether through our seniors' cookouts, our youth citywide cleanups, our support of community events, or our care for families during the loss of a loved one. The Congo family has always been there. When death occurs, whether after prolonged illness or after a sudden tragedy, it is always devastating to those left behind. And Sammy, Cherry, Kimmy, Trippy, Kia, and the entire Congo staff are always there to assist you in any way we can. From the very first phone call to long after the funeral service, we promise to be there for you. Our mission is to serve every family with dignity, respect, and care. We know the economic stress of today, so no matter what your financial circumstance, we pledge to help you celebrate your loved one's memory in the way you desire. So remember, when someone you love has passed away, call Congo Funeral Home, Delaware's premier funeral home. Visit us at our website at www.congofuneralhome.com or call us at 302-652-8887.
Hi, I'm Kim, and I am a part of the Congo Funeral Home team. My part is to help people pre-plan their funerals. Congo Funeral Home has been serving the community for many years, and now I find myself being able to say that I have helped people pre-plan funerals for 30 years. I know I'm only 34, right? How can this be? But I have been helping the community pre-plan young, more mature, brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles. Every single person can pre-plan their funeral. And you can do it with a company that you know, that you trust, that's been here supporting you for many years. Many times families come in and they're having some difficulty, and I feel bad because I need to get to these places to help people understand that you can just take your time, make easy, low monthly payments, and not have the hardship at the time of death. So sometimes when someone passes, the pain is just overwhelming, and it's intensified by the fact that we have to figure out how we're going to pay. Well, we at Congo Funeral Home want to support you in every way possible, also by giving you options to prepay your funeral. There are no health questions that would disqualify you. There's no amount of money. We will work it out so that it happens for you. So please call me, 302-652-8887 or 218-8632. And I want you to know that I'm available to come talk to your church group, your community group, just your family if you like, because it's important that we get this information out to as many people as possible so we can help everyone feel the peace that some of us feel once we know that we're securely covered. So please give me a call and I will help.
Okay, and also I just want to mention that if you ever need information about any of our upcoming funeral services, please go to www.congofuneralhome.com www.congofuneralhome.com. Again, that website address is www.congofuneralhome.com. You will be able to leave a condolence for the family. You will be able to see the upcoming services. So you can send flowers. You can send flowers right from our website. You can light a candle in memory of a loved one. But again, if you need more information, you can always call us at 652-8887. But if you just want to go to our website, it is www.congofuneralhome.com.